Yekaterinburg. This is her second speech during this conference. I wasn't torturing you with my traditional questions, so just thank you for being here. That's indeed a pleasure for me. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the possibility to talk on different topics that matter to me. Well, thank you very much. I'll try to begin. Try to adjust my image. Well, today I'll be talking without these slides. I'll be talking about the narration practices and meditation. I'll be talking about the Tibetan narrative practices. Main Buddhist practice is the meditation. I would be talking about the intersection of narrative practice and meditation. Well, I have some 5 pages of notes, and I'll try to carefully follow the plan that I've drafted. I would be quoting some of Tibetan masters and hope it would be of interest to the audience. I am the narration therapist. I'm the psychologist. For 23 years I've been working in narrative practices. I work with groups, with communities, with families. I work with individuals. I'm also the founder of a center of narration practices. And as for the Buddhist practices, I've been into this for 22 years. In Buddhism, there are lots of schools. I won't be talking about this. I support one of the schools. For us, it's just important to understand that the directions in the Buddhism, we are very different, but still some instruments are more or less the same. It's always about the strengthening of your inner self. You transform your mind. This is the main tool, and usually it is done through the meditation. There are different types of meditation, and we won't be talking about this today. I will just try to show you what is close to standard narration practices and Buddhist narration practices. And actually, not only those are not only my observations. Many colleagues see those intersections as well. Why it's important to you, how it can be useful. First of all, it's interesting to follow the so-called theory. I'll be talking about this as a researcher, so to say, giving you the analytics. But surely this kind of theory can show some ways to use these ideas in practice. We saw the same when different new spheres of biology began to emerge. Narration practices were also started from the point of view of those new directions in biology. So it's interesting sometimes to see the correlation between different factors. For example, new discoveries in neurobiology, they haven't changed the narration practices, but probably they've supported some of the ideas and some procedures that are used by the narration practitioners. So many things that were not explained before, now I explained through neurobiology. For example, why when you externalize some experiences, why you feel relieved. The same is with narration practices and Buddhism practices. It's sometimes interesting to see how they correlate and how they can actually be adopted together. Buddhist narration practices, they can be used as a part of the therapy. And usually those practices, they actually mainly work on the following. They help the person to get away, get relieved from the suffering. And the causes of suffering can be different, but usually we are related with our understanding of the world and our place in the world. In narration practices, a person tries to find what is actually bothering a person, what causes the suffering more exactly. And the Buddhist practices, they actually also about the same. Actually, the methodology is very close. For example, both the narration practices, the traditional one, and the Buddhist philosophy, we use the idea of the identity. The idea of social construct. Surely the Buddhism is more than that, but they also actually look at this particular notion. When I'm talking about the narration practices, I always mention the philosophical basis for this. I always mention that all the social relations, they are based on negotiations between people. I'm always talking about the constructs and constructivism. I would also like to remind you that constructivism can also be the radical one, and the radical constructivism says that we cannot really explore the world in full because we are always inside our box, so to say, inside a kind of a construct that we've created, and that is created by the society. Actually, this theory was created by one of the philosophers who was actually the student of Dalai Lama. That's quite interesting. So when we are talking about this construct, about this box that actually limits our perception, we don't really deny the idea that it's still possible to get outside these box. And Buddhist practices, they actually say that you always can go beyond your perception and get relieved of your sufferings. In narration practices, we usually are not talking about the full riddance of all suffering, because it would mean that the person goes too far away from the constructs that the person is embedded into. It's not possible for a person sometimes, because we are all interconnected with other people. And it's interesting that both the narration practice, the standard, the traditional one, and the Buddhism practices, we deal with the idea that there are the certain assumptions on the possibilities that a person has. Well, there are some problems with the mic. Excuse me, I've covered the papers. Excuse me that I've unfortunately didn't manage to get rid of my papers, so I hope it would be okay. Now I would try to tell you a bit more about the Buddhist masters and what they say. Those are the books by the current Karmapas. For example, the book, I would quote the book by the 17th Karmapa, the Thaya Dorje, and also I'll be talking about the text by Urgyen Trinle Dorje. They are wonderful speakers. Surely I would suggest you to read their books in English. Those Karmapas, they are the heads of certain schools within the Tibetan Buddhism, and Mr. Thaya Dorje, he is the head of Karma Kagyu school, and the other master I was mentioning is Ogyen Trenle Dorje. He is also the Karmapa, and he also represents Karma Kagyu. And they are saying the same, that we always react on the external conditions, but actually we are the ones who create those external conditions. This is the part of our connection you cannot really change, and this is the connection that helps one to be embedded in the communication within the world. When you change your attitude to those connections, you can change the world and your place in the world. We also say that the transformation of the material world can only be possible when you transform your inner world. The next idea would be about the uniqueness and singularity and according to Ogyen Trinle Dorje, nothing exists in its singularity. He writes about the lady who complained about her marriage, that she started to hate his husband, but she didn't want to divorce because she had 3 children and so on. She wanted to have good relations between the father and the children. And when the master tells the story of this lady, he highlights that it's the story about I, but those are different I's, or it's the same person actually. It seems it's kind of a 3 people and one, because one person cares about children, the other I hates the husband, and the third I wants to get independent without breaking one's heart. So we all need to understand, well, while we are one, still we have parts within ourselves. And if you have parts, can well be a singularity, can well be a single I. Actually, Buddhists, they talk a lot about the so-called undivided whole. Can there be the undivided whole if we know that there are parts? So you see the same in physics. We cannot find the smallest part. We cannot find this undivided whole. We cannot find something that would be independent and whole in itself. Everything is interrelated. Everything is about the connection. Everything exists because there are the connections. Nothing is whole. I would like to also quote some ideas about the possibility to externalize your experience. For example, also the masters write about the idea that you can be totally unique but still related to others. It's not an oxymoron. Then you say that you're an independent person interrelated by many other people, because this is something that makes us a human being. You can become an individual person while being a part of something whole. But sometimes we talk too much about the concepts of I and me, and this is why we create the artificial detachment that is actually doesn't exist. This is the idea I've read in the book called Interconnected that I highly recommend. This is read by the current 17th Karmapa of Karma Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. And actually, it's very interesting to read the books written by this 17th Karmapa. For example, he astonishingly writes about the gender and the way a socium actually created around the idea of gender. So I highly recommend it. So this is about the way people construct the reality and the identity. And another interesting narration method I would like to develop on is the externalization. When we name the problem, when we disconnect it from ourselves and research it, and we try to define some relations between ourselves and the problem. It's a kind of a linguistic practice, and it's also very close to the Tibetan practice. In Tibetan language, in Buddhism language, is everything is actually about the externalization. Everything is named as somehow kind of a detached. It's an important idea for the Buddhism practices, because you always need to have this distance from your experience, distance from your ideas, from your feelings. Even if it's something so obvious like the anger and other emotions, you need to be in a distance to understand what's going on. You need to view everything from the outside somehow. So you can define the connection and the relations between your experience and yourself, between the one who experiences something and the experience. This is very close to what we do in our traditional narration practices. During every session, actually, we have this part where then we try to externalize the experience as a kind of a homework. I always suggest that the clients should try and observe the problem using the mindfulness practices. It's not about the meditation, but it's just about being mindful about the problem, about the possibility to name the problem. So it's always about the research of a problem, not just naming it. The practice of externalization is indeed very valuable. People sometimes, then they describe the way we worked on this homework, when they look from the outside on those problems, when they try to be mindful, when they describe all these experiences, those are the experiences that are so very close to the experiences that the meditation practitioners experience. That's indeed very interesting. As for the language of externalization, I would like to mention another idea from Karmapa. And he says that many people, they actually thinks in static, so to say. Buddhists believe that the mind always transforms and let's say has different modes of perception. So what Karmapa writes about, people somehow forget that they can have different types of perception. They think about their mind from this perspective of statics, about like it's something that cannot be changed. Many people, for example, say that by nature they are greedy or bad, but actually they highlight some features that we indeed have, but somehow they forget about all other qualities that they have. And these assumptions, these static ideas, they actually prevent us from feeling who we are really. And this actually something that also prevents us from developing and from understanding your pains. This is something that limits our experience. Yes, in some states we've spent probably more time, but it's not something that is given to us by nature. It's not the only feature, not the only state that we are in, but we just put ourselves intentionally in this vicious circle. But actually we can change the language. We shouldn't just say that by my nature I am greedy. No, sometimes I feel greedy. That is totally different. And this can change everything, the wording. You can have the wider horizons. In order to see the way out of anger, you need to live through the anger. Otherwise, you would be the slave of your particular emotion. So, this is about the externalization. This is also one of the intersection between the narration practices, the standard narration practice, and the Buddhism practices, because they have this so-called analytical meditation. When you really find the distance between your experience, when you detach yourself from your emotions and you can somehow research them. Very close to narration practice and Buddhism here. When they're talking about those intersections, they are actually accidental. As far as we know, those people who created the narration practices, they were not using the Buddhism practices. They were just, they weren't even inspired. It just somehow happened so that narration practices are so very close to Buddhism. So it wasn't the intention of the authors of this methodology. But do we really have the accidents? Can it really be by accident? But it's, let's say, a philosophical question. Probably is not that accidental. You know, also another intersection between the Buddhism and narration practices is the issue of authorship. And I remember how one of the philosophers and practitioner of narration practice was saying that Foucault, for him, is not the philosopher of depression, but the philosopher of hope. Those were the ideas of Michael White. he was saying so because when a person talks, when a person tries to change the mind, then all the other changes they follow, and the person actually changes the authorship, and this changed everything. The same assumption and the same idea is more or less the same in Buddhism. Person in Buddhism can use lots of helpers, so to say, the teachers, the holy books. So the person is always given the tools, but you cannot just pray and hope that someone would change your mind, would change your attitude to life. No Buddha would come and change you at once. And the same applies to therapy. You do the changes. You are the author. Why meditation can be beneficial for the narration practices? We see there are lots of intersections, and actually meditation trains a person to overcome this state when you focus too much on particular emotions, on particular problems. They actually can become an obstacle in your perception of life. Also, meditation can help a person to be more objective, if we are talking about the person who actually works with clients, who is the narration practitioner. It also helps one, the meditation I mean, to have a kind of a distance between you and your client. We all have, but it gives a kind of a better understanding of this distance. Well, actually this is it. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. If there are questions, well, the question about the books I would show you at once. I would write the name of the books in the chat. Those are actually the books by Yekaterinburg, and also the books by Thaya Dorje. Those are both the Karmapas. Well, actually, that was really enlightening. For me, it was indeed interesting to tell about this. I've never had the possibility and I've never thought of this, but the topic of your conference gave me this opportunity. It was very inviting. Thank you very much. You've shown very interesting connections. In school, I was studying physics mainly, and for me, this idea about the undividable whole, it was very interesting. I somehow have this question somewhere in my head, but still I'm thinking over because I'm so full of many thoughts after this wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. You see already the words, nice words coming in the chat. And as for the names of the books, the titles, I would surely share all the titles with the participants later. If there are any questions, please write them in the chat. Well, it was indeed a talk you can think over again and again. I see no questions, so I'm leaving you. Thank you very much.